So, President Obama, MIA when it comes to receiving intelligence briefings, something that's actually his job. But that, of course, did not stop him from blaming someone else for all of his blunders in the Middle East. We'll talk about that. The Secret Service seems to be going from bad to worse. Director Julia Pierson has decided to step down. We'll talk about that. And Ebola, despite reassurances from our dear leader, has found its way into the United States. Hello, friends. How are you? Thank you so much for once again listening to this, The Ray Warner Show. I appreciate so much that you tune in. I am your host, Ray Warner. If you have a comment, or you want to email the show, or you have some feedback for me, or if you just want to rant or vent, you can do that. The email address is theraywarnershow@gmail.com. So, President Obama, we had a report come out, and it does not look good at all for Barack I. This was from the Government Accountability Institute, otherwise known as the GAI. The report covers 2,079 days of Obama's presidency, during which time the president has only attended 42.1% of the meetings known as the Presidential Daily Brief. It breaks down Obama's first and second terms, 42.4% being the first term and 41.3% in the second term thus far, for a grand total of 42.1%. President Obama has only attended 42% of his national security briefings. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not acceptable. Is there any question now what's going on in this administration? And the president had the nerve to throw under the bus the Director of National Security, James Clapper. Here is what he said in an interview with Steve Kroft for 60 Minutes.
How did they end up where they are in control of so much territory? Was that a complete surprise to you?
Well, I think our head of the intelligence community, Jim Clapper, has acknowledged that I think they underestimated what had been taking place in Syria.
So President Obama, who loves to tell us all about what he did, I made the decision, I gave the order to take out bin Laden, I. Instead of busting out his I, me, mine, what happened with ISIS? Well, that was him. That was Jim Clapper. He acknowledged underestimating what's going on in Syria. And by the way, if you don't know this, Obama completely spun what Clapper said. He made it sound like Clapper was the one who dropped the ball and that he admitted it. No such admission, no such acknowledgement took place. And Steve Kroft not only knew it, he called Obama out on it.
You mentioned James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence. I mean, he didn't just say that we underestimated ISIL. He said we overestimated the ability and the will of our allies, the Iraqi army, to fight.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
So Kroft calls out Obama. He didn't just say we dropped the ball on ISIS, we overestimated the ability of our allies to fight them off. And, well, that's true. That's absolutely true. So nothing is Obama's fault. It doesn't matter that he attended less than half of his presidential daily briefings. You know, President Obama started out in 2009 getting his regular briefing at the regular time like a regular president. At some point, Obama decided he didn't want these briefings. People from the intelligence community have said in the past, presidents not only listened to the briefing, but they had questions and they wanted follow-up and other information and things for intelligence officials to go find out and research. Not so with Barack I. He decided he just wanted the briefing on his desk for him to read when it was convenient. So he gets it on his iPad every morning. Once again, how detached can a person be from his own job? A pretty important job, if you ask me. So now the question is going to be, what was the content of those briefings? Has he been told about the Islamic State or not? Was he warned about the ambitions of Russia, of Putin? What is he being briefed on right now? That is, going to come out next month. Representative Paul Ryan went on CNN and said they've been hearing about ISIS for years.
We have been getting briefings on ISIS for some time now, not just recently, but for a couple of years. The intelligence community has been warning us about ISIS.
Well, what do you know? Paul Ryan has been hearing about ISIS for years. Are we supposed to believe the president's been out of the loop on national security? We're supposed to believe Intelligence Director James Clapper dropped the ball? You know that if Paul Ryan has been hearing about ISIS for years, then Obama has as well. Or at least it's been in the brief on his desk, on his iPad every day. See, Obama just doesn't care. National security is not important to him. What's more important to Obama is pushing his lunatic leftist ideology forward. Remember a few weeks ago, I played the two Obamas side by side. I played him discussing his strategy, or at the time, the lack thereof, in combating ISIS, side by side with him talking about, I think it was amnesty. See, that's important to him, amnesty, something the people don't want, something the American people do not want by any stretch of the imagination. Amnesty will further degrade and destroy America, degrade and destroy American culture, American jobs, the American economy. That's Obama's real degrade and destroy mission. How to turn a free, thriving, and prosperous America into some third world, Euro, socialist-looking thing. Obamacare, another thing that's important to him, which is nothing more than the gateway to just completely government-run health care. That's Obama's mission. Opening the borders, getting as many illegal aliens in here as he can, and then figuring out how to get them allowed to vote. How to use the UN to disarm America. How to keep gas prices near $4 a gallon. These are the things that preoccupies his mind, not national security. He could care less about national security. He had to be dragged off the golf course and shoved into the photo of the SEAL Team 6 operation being watched in the Situation Room. The day after Benghazi burned and 4 Americans died, including Ambassador Chris Stevens, he took off for Las Vegas for a fundraiser. When Governor Rick Perry wanted him to tour the border, he went up to Colorado to drink beer and shoot pool. National security. He's in his own foot race with ISIS to see who can destroy America first. He's still in the middle of his fundamental transformation of America. He doesn't have time to listen about Islamist nut jobs murdering Christians. He's on their side, for crying out loud. Paul Ryan continued, and when he does, this is good stuff. Listen to this. Listen to CNN's impartial, unbiased journalist, Aaron Burnett, try to defend the Obama administration.
The president made 2 colossal mistakes in his foreign policy, not getting a special forces, a status of forces agreement in Iraq, and his Syria policy, which in part has given rise to the problem we have today. And so we were not cold. I don't think he got cold feet, or he got caught off guard with ISIS. The intel community has been telling us about ISIS. I just think the president hasn't put together a policy until now.
And I mean,
his policy is better, but it's got a ways to go.
There were some mixed messages. There were questions of whether ISIS was a fractional group, that it was more Sunni Shiite violence, and that's what it was, as opposed to something as coordinated.
The intel community has been pretty good at telling us how sophisticated they've become and how they were coming into Iraq. That is something that we did know was coming.
Good for Paul Ryan, not putting up with her crap and telling it like it is. The United States has the best intelligence community on the planet. We have the most sophisticated tools and technology at our disposal. We have by far the most resources of any nation to ascertain what is going on anywhere in the world at any time. We just have a fool at the helm who doesn't care about what's best for you, for me, or for America. And this is nothing new. This isn't even the first time the Government Accountability Institute put out a statistic about the president and his lack of desire to stay engaged with national security. Maybe you forgot this, but it's a very interesting timeline of events. The Institute put out a report stating that the president had only attended 43.8% of his presidential daily briefs, which at the time was better than it is now, but that's still less than half. And that was back in 2012. Jay Carney was asked about it at the daily press briefing that day. This is what he said.
Who does get the presidential daily briefing if he's not there? I saw this report.
I saw that report. And it is hilarious to me. He gets it every day, okay? The President of the United States gets the presidential daily briefing every day. There is a document that he reads every day when he is not, well, he always reads it every day because he's a voracious consumer of all of his briefing materials. And when he is physically here, most days, he has a meeting in his office, the Oval one, with participants in his national security team, including, obviously, Tom Donnellan and others. So he also has regular meetings with...
This is about physical briefing from the whoever's giving it versus the print briefing.
I don't know how far I want to go here, but I believe if you compare our foreign policy record with the one that preceded this one, we're comfortable with that comparison. And this president is very much steeped in the details of national security issues and the information that, as president, he received. I believe the article written about it was amusing.
So the words Jay Carney used to describe the report: hilarious, amusing. He tried to reassure us that the president is a voracious consumer of intelligence material briefings. You know, to say something like that, it has to mean something's wrong. You're trying so hard to convince people otherwise. But Jay Carney found the report hilarious and amusing. That was September 10th, 2012. The report came out. Jay Carney made those comments. The next day, September 11th, 2012, we all woke up to the news of Benghazi. Within 24 hours of Jay Carney mocking the Government Accountability Institute report, telling us how amusing it is to read about the president not attending his daily briefing. Within 24 hours, Benghazi had burned down and 4 Americans were killed. And what's worse is the president is now attending even less briefings than he was before. Paul Ryan says they've been hearing about ISIS all along. Obama tried to blame the intelligence director. I think it's obvious who the incompetent party is. Or is he? You know, Obama is not stupid. I think what's happening is exactly what he wants to be happening. He's intentionally destroying America, all the while blaming someone else for whatever makes him look bad. And he's not done. He still has amnesty on the back burner. I think amnesty would be done already if he could have figured out a way to get Republicans to do it. He knows nobody wants it. And what's really funny, I love it when liberals do this. Luis Gutierrez, you know, you have all these issues in play: national security, the border, Obamacare, taxes, redistribution of wealth, the unemployment rate, gas prices, all of the issues in play. Just imagine all of the issues in America are each a key on a piano. And Luis Gutierrez, he just keeps pounding on one key over and over and over. Amnesty. This guy, it's like there is no other problem going on anywhere in the world. He is completely unaware of the Middle East, completely unaware of China, of Russia, North Korea. He has no clue about anything except amnesty. It's all he talks about. He wakes up in the morning, he talks about amnesty all day, goes to bed, wake up and repeat. Amnesty, amnesty, amnesty. He was telling people last month, here it comes, amnesty, get ready, here it is. He was all excited. Obama's going to do it right now. And all the while, Obama is just trying to, get it done without his fingerprints on it, and it's not happening. It keeps getting put off, and much to the dismay of poor Gutierrez, he wants it now. Obama's like, hey, will you shut up? Let's get through this election. So now, Gutierrez, and I love when they do this, he says if Republicans try to overturn amnesty, it will end the Republican Party forever. Oh, well, thank you so much, Luis Gutierrez, for your sound advice. I know you want nothing more than for Republicans to thrive, and you're just helping them do that. How stupid does he think Republicans are? And before you answer, let's keep in mind that's the kind of stuff that works on them. Here is Gutierrez warning the GOP not to take action against amnesty. You guys want to stay a party, right? Don't do that. Here he is.
Just imagine for a moment, the President of the United States makes an announcement. We figure out who the 5-6 million people are, right? We get ready to register them, and the Republican majority decides that they're going to obstruct that process. They will be the end of the Republican Party. as a national party in the United States of America. I'm ready for the president to act. And let me tell you something. Whoever attacks the decision of the president to bring justice and fairness to millions of undocumented immigrants and allow them to have justice in this country, I'm ready for that fight.
Now, is that not a special kind of crazy? He wants amnesty so bad he can taste it. And sometimes I wonder, I'm convinced Obama knows better. He knows nobody wants it and tries to maneuver accordingly. Does Luis Gutierrez really believe what he's saying? He can't possibly think that's true, can he? Whatever party does amnesty is the party that's going to get hammered. I wouldn't say it would be the end of that party, but it will get hammered. He thinks the party that opposes it is going to disappear forever. I'm just curious if he is just saying that, for the sake of rhetoric, or if he really believes that. Because if he really believes that, wow. Stay there. I'm Ray Warner. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Ray Warner Show.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
You have reached the Bovine Chicken Chat Line, where you can chat with tons and tons of cows about chicken. All our cows are busy. While you're waiting, why not get to know some of these fuzzy fans of chicken? Heifer 9672 is a 1,200-pounder from Kentucky who likes long walks in the pasture, watching cars go by from the pasture, and eating the pasture. She's also an aspiring author, writing a book called The Burgers of Wrath. Bull 5441 is a bull from Chicago with a pierced nose and a nasty temper. But he loves people who eat chicken and the good folks at Chick-fil-A who make the chicken. Bull 5441's pet peeves are cow tipping and the color red, especially when it's meat. All our cows are still busy. Please try calling the Bovine Chicken Chat Line later. The cows thank you for calling and for not eating burgers. This call made possible by Chick-fil-A.
Say to the people of Ferguson, Missouri, get to the polls by 7 o'clock this evening so you won't have to march at midnight. That's the kind of stuff that we've got to do today. Use the tools that we have. We can text, what do we call it, sexting. Let's do some voting, organizing over the internet.
Welcome back, friends. This is Ray Warner on The Ray Warner Show. If you want to email me, the email address is theraywarnershow@gmail.com. That was Representative James Clyburn telling people to start sexting about Ferguson. The good news is at least he can't possibly know what sexting is. Maybe we'll have to send our buddy Anthony Weiner over there. Maybe he can give him a call and fill him in. Anyway, so Secret Service Director Julia Pierson resigns. What a shame. The only person in this administration that actually took responsibility for her actions. In my opinion, she should have stayed there just for that reason. In a town where everybody is pointing the finger at everybody else, she admits responsibility. Well, that's too bad. You're a little too honest for this place, lady. Take a hike. Now, if you will recall, it was Julia Pierson who was appointed director of the Secret Service because it was thought she could repair the organization's image. Remember when we started hearing stories circulating of Secret Service agents who were hooking up with prostitutes and drinking alcohol on the job? These incidents took place, before the entourage arrived. Wherever the president travels, the Secret Service is there days in advance, planning where he will stay, where he will be, what routes he will be traveling, where he's going to wait, things like that. And before the president had arrived, somewhere, I think in South America, I don't remember, but the agents, they were just partying down there. And Julia Pierson was supposed to fix all that, and maybe she did. Who knows? I don't recall a bunch of stories since then. But there apparently has been an enormous breakdown in security somewhere. Fence jumpers are making it all the way up to and even inside the White House. The last one, Omar Gonzalez, he could have gone up the stairs into the First Family residence area if he knew where he was going, but I guess he ran right past the stairs. Should these people be met with deadly force? What happens in other countries? Try charging the residents of Vladimir Putin and see what happens to you. If someone hops the fence and is charging full speed at the White House, I'm just curious. I mean, what is the protocol? They just tackle him? I've just never given that much thought, but I guess that's what they do. They just tackle him. And they say usually they tackle him right there on the front lawn. If you ask me, they should be shot on sight. Maybe if he's, still far away enough from the building, you give a warning, you yell out stop or halt, get down, whatever. But if this guy was an Islamic suicide bomber wearing an explosive vest, running up there, how many agents are in the White House at any given time? Imagine this. Imagine 10 fence jumpers, all wearing vests, running up there, and they all get tackled by several agents, and they detonate. There goes most of the Secret Service squad. Then other fence jumpers run up and overwhelm the rest of the agents, and they put up their, black Islamic flag or whatever, like they say they're going to do. I know, I'm crazy, right? You think they even consider such a scenario? The biggest problem for poor Julia Pierson is that there's really no way out of the dilemma. Think about this. What would the response have been if Omar was shot halfway across the lawn and died right there? What would the media do with that? Can you imagine the firestorm? The media would be calling for the Secret Service head. They would be calling for restraint. Omar Gonzalez sounds like he's a minority, so the agents would also be racist for killing him, right? And the big incident that has recently been leaked out is, I guess, an armed man with a criminal record managed to ride in an elevator with Obama. How did that happen? Representative Jason Chaffetz said the multiple security failures were all a direct result of poor leadership. And he's right. Julia Pierson may have been able to clean up the agency's image on hookers and alcohol, but if they can't keep intruders out of the building, what good is that? There was a shooting at the White House fairly recently. Secret Service agents drew their weapons and took defensive positions. It wasn't until several days later broken glass was found by a housekeeper. Trey Gowdy questioned Pierson about this.
So as I understand it, several agents believed that shots were fired, and a supervisor concluded that it was a vehicle backfiring. Even if that were true, given the very small investment of resources, why not investigate the shots fired?
Representative, I think that is where some of the confusion starts to come out as the story that's in the Washington Post.
I'm not asking you about a Washington Post story. I'm asking you about why a housekeeper who doesn't go to Glencoe, who doesn't spend 14 weeks in training, who doesn't have 18 weeks of training thereafter, found glass, and your agents did not.
The housekeeper was able to locate fragments of glass on the Truman balcony, which is not an area that is frequented by security personnel.
And I didn't ask you about who is frequent. I asked you, there was a spontaneous conclusion that shots were fired. There were officers who believed they smelled gunpowder. Your officers drew their weapons, Director. That's how seriously they took it. So I'm not interested in cursory searches. When did your agency find evidence of the shooting?
I believe it was on the 15th or 14th of November.
Which was how many days after the shooting?
3 to 4 days later.
All right. So you have an officer contemporaneous with the shooting believing that shots were fired. You have officers taking cover because they believe shots were fired. You have officers at the White House drawing their weapons because they believe shots were fired. Now give me all the evidence to support a vehicle backfiring.
Representative, I am sure your familiarity with law enforcement in downtown areas, there is sound attenuation. Oftentimes, equity.
I've never heard a car backfire 6 to 8 times, Director, ever. Have you?
I've heard car backfires, but I don't think...
6 to 8 times.
I think it's undisputed that there were witnesses that observed shots being fired.
Right, and it is also undisputed that a housekeeper who doesn't train at Glencoe, who doesn't have 18 weeks of intensive training, found the evidence of the shooting, and your agency did not.
So, shots were fired. Uniformed officers outside the fence said shots were fired. Agents drew their weapons and took defensive positions. And then it was all concluded in the end that a car backfired 6 to 8 times. And whatever security sweep was performed afterwards obviously wasn't up to snuff. Yeah, definitely a problem over there. You know, Obama walks around the most incompetent person in the room wherever he goes, thumbing his nose at the Constitution and just having a sense of lawlessness about him. That's bound to rub off on the people directly around him, don't you think? Be right back. Don't go away.
"21 Signs of Doomsday." God said, man said.com. Noah's Ark, fact or fiction? Geologists say yes to crucifixion. Science says eat butter. God said, man said.com. Scientists study speaking in tongues. Hours of text and audio. God said, man said.com. Doctors flummox for what they found in female brains. St. Peter's fish, hell worms, extraterrestrials amongst us. God said, man said.com.
All right, we are back. This is the Ray Warner Show. I am your host, Ray Warner. You can email the show. If you want to do that, the email address is theraywarnershow@gmail.com. So we now have a case of Ebola here in America. Thomas Eric Duncan, a Liberian citizen, by the way, not even an American citizen. You know, back in the good old days, when politicians at least pretended to care about America and the American people, they would stop all travel coming into the country from an area of the planet where there was the spreading infection of some deadly illness. But that was back in the good old days. This is the Obama administration. Anything and everything is viewed through the lens of how does this hurt or help Obama and the lunatic leftist liberal agenda. Now, you can almost have predicted a case of Ebola was going to show up here in America, and this is why.
First and foremost, I want the American people to know that our experts here at the CDC and across our government agree that the chances of an Ebola outbreak here in the United States are extremely low. We've been taking the necessary precautions, including working with countries in West Africa to increase screening at airports so that someone with the virus doesn't get on a plane for the United States.
So you just heard President Obama telling us the chances of Ebola coming in to America are extremely low. And he told us why. He told us all the precautions that are being taken. He told us all about screening and training going on. The CDC and our government officials, they were all over it. Well, Obama trying to give anybody a guarantee is just a kiss of death. It seems anything he tries to do. Remember that BP oil spill in the Gulf? There was an accident. That happened right after Obama gave that very oil rig a safety award. Kiss of death. Remember the Chicago Olympics? He went and made a speech to make that happen. It didn't happen. He says Al-Qaeda is gone. Yeah, whatever. As soon as he actively gets involved in something, it's bound to fail. That just seems to follow him wherever he goes. President Poo-Poo Hands. In this case, all of the reassurance in the world was not going to keep Ebola out of the country. You can almost have predicted it. Where there is Obama, there is incompetence. So if you were counting on this administration to take care of it, well, this is what you get. Now, I want to read a letter or part of a letter, that was written to Secretary of State John Kerry and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson. Dear Secretary Kerry and Secretary Johnson, I write to request the imposition of a travel ban on the citizens of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone and any foreign person who has visited one of these nations 90 days prior to arriving in the United States. I also ask that this ban be expanded to any other nation that reports originating a case of Ebola virus disease, and that travel restrictions be removed only when 90 days have passed without a newly reported case. The current Ebola epidemic spreading throughout West Africa is the worst in recorded history. According to the World Health Organization, through July 23rd, there have been 1,201 suspected Ebola cases and 672 deaths attributed to those cases. Unfortunately, those numbers are now a week old and have likely grown. Additionally, the Ministry of Health of Nigeria reported the first probable Ebola case on Friday, which was attributed to a visiting U.S. citizen, reportedly Patrick Sawyer of Coon Rapids, Minnesota, traveled by air to Lagos, Nigeria, became symptomatic while traveling, was admitted to the hospital on July 20th upon arrival in Nigeria, and succumbed to the disease on July 25th. This latest development is particularly troubling because Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos is the third busiest airport in Africa, and it offers direct flights to the United States. I urge you to consider the enhanced danger Ebola now presents to the American people, and therefore request that appropriate travel restrictions be implemented immediately. I believe that you have the legal authority to implement this request, but if you believe otherwise, please let me know immediately. I look forward to your response, yada, yada, yada. The date on that letter that I just read, and yeah, the numbers, they were a week old then. That was, the date on the letter is July 29th. And he said over 600 people had died of Ebola. It's now around 3,000. Why was it not heeded? Why has travel been permitted from these areas in West Africa, in Liberia, and Sierra Leone, where Ebola is on a rampage? Like I said, shutting down travel has been done before. That letter that I just read was written by none other than Florida Democrat Alan Grayson. How stupid are you when somebody like Alan Grayson is trying to help you, is smarter than you, is seeing a problem before you? And by the way that the administration and the CDC is responding to this case of this guy coming to the U.S. with Ebola, it's kind of bizarre. You can tell they're like in full-on, put a lid on it mode. They don't even want to release what flight this guy was on, so they don't cause mass panic. He was a passenger on 3 different planes that day. Where are these planes right now? Still just flying around out there? How would you like to be the one who got his seat after him? I wonder if anyone on the plane used the bathroom after him. Who's on a plane right now with Ebola? And how did this guy get on a plane? Are people still getting on a plane with this disease? Listen to this CDC official.
This was not a failure of the screening process at the airport. It's one of the realities that we've pointed to with this epidemic being so big and so historical that it's inevitable. The longer this epidemic exists, the bigger it gets, the greater the risk of importation events like we've just seen.
That was a CDC official saying this was not a breakdown in the screening process. You know what part of the screening process is? A questionnaire. You know what's on the questionnaire? Have you recently been in contact with an infected person? So here you come to the airport. You think you might have Ebola, and you're going to get on a plane to the United States. Are you going to say, well, I might have Ebola? Are you going to say that? I was just around people with Ebola. Because they're not going to let you on the plane after that, right? Before getting on a plane to the United States, Thomas Eric Duncan rode in a taxi cab in Liberia with a very ill pregnant woman with Ebola. And after the cab ride, she was too weak to walk, and Duncan carried her into the house. A few days later, she died and Duncan gets on a plane on his way to America. At the airport, he was asked, was he in contact with anyone who was sick? And he says no. That's not a breakdown in the screening process? Well, I guess not on the screener's part. I mean, he lied. He lied and he got on the plane. The more I think about it, the more I think he did it on purpose, knowing he could be treated in America. He sees what's going on over there. Everybody with Ebola ends up dead over there. So he just figures, I'll jump on a plane, I'll come to America. If I get sick, then I'll be treated in America. You know, I thought I would never say something like this, but here goes. Alan Grayson was right. Travel should have been stopped, and it wasn't, and it still isn't, and here we are. Now an NBC cameraman working over there has got Ebola, and he's on his way back for treatment. By the way, not to be outdone, the Islamic State is saying they intend to infect their soldiers with Ebola and send them here to infect as many people as they can. I guess they don't like taking a back seat to news of an outbreak. Ebola was just stealing their thunder. That's it for this week, friends. Thank you so much for listening. This has been The Ray Warner Show. I am your host, Ray Warner. And please don't forget, if you have any questions for me, any comments, if you have any feedback about the show, you can email me. The email address is theraywarnershow@gmail.com. Don't forget to catch the daily quick reports. You can subscribe at theraywarnershow.com. You can subscribe through iTunes. There's any number of ways you can get it. You'll find us on Facebook. We're on the Twitter, and we have a YouTube channel. Check us out online. But however it is you listen to The Ray Warner Show, I thank you for that, and we'll see you next week. So long.